Tonight, I will reprogram your mind to manifest anything. I do not say this lightly, my dear. I am not here to entertain you, nor to tickle your ears with pretty phrases. I speak to you as one who has tested the law, as one who has proved it again and again in the furnace of life. Tonight, if you will walk with me inwardly, if you will dare to accept what I tell you as true of yourself, you will never again look at your world in the same way. You have been told all your life that change comes from effort, from struggle, from adjusting the outer picture. You have been trained to believe that the cause of your experience is outside of you, in men, in events, in conditions, in chance. And so you have tried to move the pieces on the board, to wrestle with circumstances, to change people, to arrange situations. But I tell you, all of that belongs to the realm of effect. It is shadow, it is echo, it is projection. Tonight I want you to hear me as though you were hearing yourself. For I am not speaking of a man called Neville who lived in such and such a year. I am speaking of the being that you are, the I am in you, wearing the name and form you answer to. That I am is the only creator, and that creator does not work from without in, but from within out. Man is all imagination, not partly imagination, not sometimes imagination, but all imagination. Your essential nature is imaginal. Before you lift a finger, you imagine. Before you speak a word, you imagine. Before any event appears in your world, it has already been accepted in the deep of you as true. Consciousness is the only reality, and imagination is its creative power. Pause a moment and look at your world. The room where you sit, the clothes upon your body, the city in which you live, the occupation you hold. All these things were once imaginal. They existed first as ideas, as mental pictures, as longings, as fears, as expectations. Someone, somewhere imagined them, and then the invisible took on form. The visible world is imagination clothed in fact. So when I say to you, tonight I will reprogram your mind, I do not mean that I will put something foreign into you. I am here to remind you of what you already are, to take the crooked concept you have of yourself and straighten it, to turn your attention away from the shadow and back to the light that casts it. I want you to see that your mind has been programming your life all along. Only now you will take the controls consciously. You may look at your present circumstances and say, "But Neville, how can you tell me I can manifest anything when this is my situation, this is my body, this is my bank account, this is my past?" And I smile, because you speak of them as though they were permanent, as though they were carved in stone. Yet they are nothing more than hardened states of consciousness, assumptions long persisted in, feelings long indulged. Your life is not fixed. Nothing in your world is final, save the being who imagines it. You are not condemned to repeat the past. You are not chained to the opinions of others. You are not the victim of fate, nor of heredity, nor of what you call luck. You are the operant power. You may have been using that power ignorantly, but you have never been without it. Think of a gramophone record. The music that plays is determined by the grooves already cut into it. Each time you place the needle, the same tune arises. So it is with the mind. Your habitual thoughts, your inner conversations, your chronic feelings, they have cut a pattern, and life, like the faithful needle, simply reads that pattern and plays it out as events, as encounters, as so-called coincidences. If you do not like the tune, you do not smash the instrument. You do not blame the air that carries the sound. You change the record. Tonight, we are going to change the record of your mind. We will not break the world. We will replace the inner pattern that the world is now mirroring. You have perhaps prayed in the past, begging some distant God to change your circumstances, to give you what you do not yet dare to feel you possess. And when nothing seemed to happen, you concluded that perhaps God did not hear, or did not care, or that you were unworthy. I tell you, the only reason your prayer went unanswered is that you prayed as a beggar, not as a creator. You asked from the state of lack, and the law which ever reflects the state brought you more lack. Tonight we reverse the order. You shall no longer pray as one who wants, but as one who has. You shall no longer speak as the man who is waiting for the miracle, but as the man for whom the miracle is already accomplished in the unseen. For that is what I mean by reprogramming your mind, to lift you from the consciousness of waiting into the consciousness of having, from the sense of separation into the sense of union with your desire. You may say, is it truly so simple? Yes, my dear, it is. It is simple, but not always easy, because you have been trained to believe in appearances more than in imagination. You have bowed before facts as though they were gods. You have said, I will believe when I see, and so you have bound yourself to the slowest, dullest level of life. The law of consciousness says, believe first, and you shall see. Tonight, as you listen, I ask of you one thing: suspend your disbelief. You do not have to swear an oath to me. You do not have to understand every word. Simply allow the possibility that what I say may be true of you. Let it enter you like a gentle seed. Your intellect may argue, but the deeper self will recognize its own voice. You have within you a sleeping giant, the feeling of I am. Before you add any word to it, I am is pure being, limitless, formless, eternal. Whatever you attach to that I am with feeling, you clothe yourself in. I am poor. I am unlucky. I am always overlooked. These are garments you have been wearing, perhaps for years. They feel familiar, and because they feel familiar, you call them facts. But tonight I invite you to undress mentally. Lay aside these old robes of limitation. For a little while, forget what the world has told you about yourself. Forget what your senses insist upon. Forget even the name by which men call you. Just feel, I am. Not I am this or I am that, but simply, I am. In that stillness, in that naked awareness, you stand at the door of infinite possibility. From that door, you can step into any state. You can assume any role. You can wear any fortune. Your mind, rightly directed, can reorganize the whole of your world without strain, without violence. For the world is yourself pushed out. Change self, and the world, compelled by law, must answer. Do not be frightened by this power. It is not strange. It is the same power you already use to worry, to fear, to rehearse arguments, to relive old pains. You have been reprogramming your mind all your life. Only now we shall do it consciously and lovingly. Instead of carving grooves of failure, we shall cut new grooves of triumph. Instead of planting seeds of I cannot, we shall plant I already am. Tonight, as you hear my voice, allow it to move from the surface of the mind into the depth of you. Let the words soak into that deep subconscious where all your reactions are born. I am not asking you to strain. I am asking you to relax into a new acceptance of yourself, to let go of the old story, and to taste, even faintly, at first, the feeling of a new one. You will see, as we walk together, that nothing stands between you and the life you desire, but an old idea of yourself. That idea can be changed. The pattern can be rewritten. The inner record can be replaced. And when it is, your outer world will seem to rearrange itself as though by magic. It is not magic. It is not magic. It is law. So tonight I say to you, with all the earnestness of my being, your life is not fixed. Your future is not a repetition of your past. You can manifest anything, not because the universe suddenly becomes kind, but because you awaken to what you have always been. Imagination in action. Take a deep breath where you are. Feel the chair beneath you, the floor under your feet. Become aware, not of the room, but of the one who is aware. That awareness is the key. That awareness is the Christ of Scripture. The I am that was in the beginning and is now and ever shall be. To that awareness, all things are possible. Tonight, we shall turn that awareness upon itself. We shall direct it deliberately toward the life you choose to live. We shall retrain it to dwell in the end, rather than in the problem, to feel from the answered prayer, rather than toward it. And if you will persist, even a little, you will discover that reality is far more obedient, far more fluid, far more malleable than you ever dared to hope. You have not come here by accident. There are no accidents in the divine economy. Something in you has grown weary of being at the mercy of circumstances. Something in you has said, enough. That something brought you here. I am merely the echo of your own desire for freedom. So, my dear, let us set aside the old for a while. Let us forget what the newspapers say, what the relatives say, what the banker says, what yesterday says. Tonight, there are only two things that matter: your awareness of being and what you choose to be aware of being. In that simple pivot lies the whole secret. Now, let us begin the real work. Now that your mind has begun to loosen its grip on the old outer story, I must give you the one foundation upon which everything rests. If you miss this, you will turn every other teaching into a hollow ritual. If you grasp this, even faintly at first, the whole structure of your life will begin to tremble and then reorganize itself from within. Consciousness is the only reality. I do not say this poetically, I mean it literally. There is no other cause. There is no secondary power. There is no external creator shaping your days. There is only consciousness and what you are conscious of being. You look out at the world and you see streets, buildings, people, money, illness, opportunity, delay, pleasure, loss, and you say, this is reality. But I tell you, this is only the shadow cast by an inner light you do not yet fully recognize as your own. A shadow has no power to move itself. It has no will. It cannot initiate. It can only reflect. Your world is the shadow. Your consciousness is the substance. Change the substance, and the shadow must change its shape. You have been trained to believe the opposite. You have been taught that the world acts upon you, that causes come from without, that you must react to what happens. You say, when this changes, I will feel different. When I get this, I will be at peace. When that goes away, I will be free. And so you live your life in reverse, always waiting for some rearrangement of shadows to give you permission to feel whole. But life does not work that way. It never has. The feeling you carry within you is the cause. The event that follows is the effect. You are not the product of your circumstances. Your circumstances are the product of you. This is not a belief system. This is a law, as exact and impersonal as gravity. The world does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are conscious of being. You may say, but I am conscious of being poor, or lonely, or overlooked. Does that mean I created this? And yes, in the deepest sense, you did. Not deliberately, not maliciously, but unconsciously, through long habit, through emotional identification, through repeated inner consent to a certain idea of self. Your world is faithfully expressing the story you have been telling yourself about who you are. I use the word state because it is the most precise. You are always in a state of consciousness. You pass through many states in a single day: confidence, anxiety, hope, resentment, trust, fear. But one or two of these states tend to dominate, and that dominant state becomes what you call your life. The state is the cause. The experience is the effect. You do not enter a state because of what happens. What happens enters your life because of the state you occupy. Think of an actor on a stage. When he assumes the role of a king, he does not then wait for the audience to crown him so that he may feel majestic. He first enters the state of majesty, and then every gesture, every word, every movement flows from that assumption. And the audience, seeing the effect, says, he is a king. You are no different. Life is your stage, and you are always playing a role. The tragedy is not that you play a role, but that you have forgotten that you chose it. Your I is the cause. What you attach to that I is the state. I am successful. I am unwanted. I am always struggling. I am blessed. These are not descriptions. They are declarations of identity. And identity is the root from which everything grows. You do not experience wealth and then feel wealthy. You feel wealthy and then experience wealth. You do not experience love and then feel loved. You feel loved and then experience love. This is why repeating affirmations often fails. A man may say 1,000 times, I am rich, while inwardly he feels anxious, inferior, and unsure. The words drift on the surface, but the state beneath remains unchanged. And the law does not answer words. It answers states. It answers feeling. It answers assumption. You may paint a door on a wall all day long, but until you believe it is a door, you will not try to open it. And until you try to open it, nothing will happen. So it is with affirmations spoken without inner movement. You are always affirming something. Every sigh of discouragement is an affirmation. Every feeling of this is hopeless is an affirmation. Every quiet inner statement of this always happens to me is an affirmation. You do not need to learn how to affirm. You need to become aware of what you have already been affirming by the states you habitually occupy. If I could get you to see only this one thing, that your identity is the root and everything else is the fruit, your entire life would begin to rearrange itself without any outer war. You would stop trying to fix symptoms and go directly to the source. You would stop asking, how can I change this situation? And begin asking, who must I be for this to be true? The world argues loudly for its own reality. Your senses insist that what you see is final, that what you touch is solid, that what you hear is authoritative. But the senses are latecomers. They report what has already been accepted in consciousness. The senses are messengers, not authors. And yet you have bowed to the messenger and ignored the author. You say, I am afraid because the money is gone. But the deeper truth is that the money is gone because you were first afraid. You say, I feel unloved because no one chooses me. But the deeper truth is that no one chooses you because you first chose yourself as unlovable. I do not say this to accuse you. I say it to give you back your power. For if you created it unconsciously, you can recreate it consciously. The state you now occupy did not arrive in a moment. It was built brick by brick, through years of inner speech, emotional reactions, silent conclusions. It was rehearsed so often that it became natural, and when it became natural, it began to look inevitable. But nothing that is imagined is inevitable. It is only persistent, and what is persistent can be replaced. Your true work is not to battle the outer world. Your true work is to change the mood of yourself. Mood is not merely emotion. Mood is the atmosphere of your consciousness. It is the air your thoughts breathe. Change the atmosphere, and the kind of thoughts that live there must change. And when the thoughts change, so does the world they project. You do not need to tear down the old identity violently. You starve it. You withdraw attention from it. You stop rehearsing its story. You stop consulting its opinions about what is possible. And instead, you gently, persistently, consistently return to a new feeling of self. At first, it will feel unfamiliar. It may even feel false. But falsity is only unfamiliarity. Truth is what you grow accustomed to. A state becomes real by being occupied. That is all. You do not argue yourself into a new identity. You live into it. You feel from it. You think from it. You speak from it. First inwardly, then outwardly. And as you persist, the law which never fails reorganizes the shadow world to match the inner shift. This is why some struggle for years with no visible change, while another person, hearing the same idea once, seems to leap suddenly into a new life. It is not that the law loved one more than the other. It is that one truly moved into a new state, while the other only visited it as a hope. You do not become a new man by wishing, nor by analyzing, nor by understanding alone. You become a new man by assuming that you already are one, and staying there. Every state you have ever occupied once began as an assumption. You assumed you were capable. You assumed you were limited. You assumed the world was kind. You assumed it was cruel. And the world, obedient servant that it is, arranged itself accordingly. Now, as you sit here listening, I want you to notice something subtle. You are aware of my words. You are aware of your thoughts about them. You are aware of the sensations in your body. That awareness itself never changes. It is stable, silent, untouched by success or failure, youth or age. That awareness is the I am, and that I am is the same power that said, let there be light. It is the same power that animates the stars. It is the same power that now beats your heart without your permission. You have been using this power carelessly, automatically, often against yourself. Tonight, you are learning to use it deliberately. The moment you accept that consciousness is the only reality, you stop being the pawn of circumstance and become its source. This realization alone is enough to make a man tremble, for it means there is no one to blame and no one to wait for. It means salvation is not coming from the sky. It is rising from within. It means the responsibility and the glory are both yours. Your entire life up to this moment has been lived from a certain idea of yourself. Perhaps that idea was inherited from parents, confirmed by teachers, reinforced by lovers, seemingly proven by events, but it was still only an idea. And an idea, no matter how old, no matter how stubborn, no matter how real it seems, can be replaced by another idea if you will assume it instead. You may feel a quiet stirring now, a mixture of discomfort and possibility. Discomfort because the old story begins to lose its authority. Possibility because something deeper in you recognizes its own forgotten power. Do not run from that feeling. Stay with it. Let it expand. You are not here to improve your circumstances slightly. You are here to awaken as a creator. And a creator does not ask permission from his creation. He changes the pattern within himself and watches the creation follow. Your whole life, without knowing it, you have been asking the wrong question. You have been asking, how can I change my world? And now, perhaps for the first time, you see that the only true question is, who must I become? When that question takes root, everything else rearranges itself in silence. And now, as this truth begins to settle in you, something subtle but profound is happening. You are no longer merely listening to ideas. You are beginning to question the very foundation upon which your life has been built. You are starting to suspect that your past was not fate, that your present is not fixed, and that your future is not a continuation of what has been. That suspicion is the first crack in the wall. And through that crack, a great light will enter. Remain with me. We are only at the beginning, and already the world you thought was solid has begun to soften. Listen closely now, for what I am about to tell you will quietly remove both your guilt and your excuses at the same time. You are always manifesting, not sometimes, not only when you visualize, not only when you pray, always. You are manifesting when you hope, when you fear, when you remember, when you anticipate, when you judge, when you sigh, when you silently accept an idea as true. You never stop creating. You only change what you create. This is why I must free you from blame before I awaken you to responsibility. For many, when they first hear that consciousness is the only reality, feel a sudden weight, then have I done all this to myself? And the heart tightens. The mind protests. The soul feels accused. That is not my intention. You did not create your life deliberately in ignorance. A child does not sin when he stumbles in the dark, but now the light is appearing, and when light appears, blindness can no longer be defended. You have been manifesting from fear far more skillfully than from faith. You have practiced it daily without knowing you were practicing at all. Fear imagines vividly. Fear feels deeply. Fear assumes persistently. And the law, being impartial, answers fear just as faithfully as it answers love. When you imagine loss over and over, when you emotionally rehearse disaster, when you quietly expect disappointment, the world obeys those silent commands. You say, I worry because bad things happen. But the deeper order is the reverse. Bad things appear because you dwell habitually in worry. You may not even call it worry anymore. You call it realism. You call it being careful. You call it preparing for the worst. But the law calls it assumption. And assumption, whether noble or destructive, must objectify itself in the world. You have also manifested from lack. Not only lack of money, but lack of love, lack of safety, lack of worth. You have walked through life feeling slightly insufficient, slightly behind, slightly unchosen, and that quiet feeling, rarely shouted, often whispered, has shaped more of your destiny than any dramatic event ever did. For the law moves more powerfully through the feeling you live with than through the words you occasionally speak. When you feel that you must struggle to deserve, life gives you more to struggle with. When you feel that you must beg to receive, life gives you more reasons to beg. When you feel that you must chase, life keeps what you want just far enough ahead to keep you running. This is not punishment. It is precision. Your inner dialogue is the script of your life, not the words you speak aloud to impress others, but the quiet conversation you maintain with yourself when no one can hear. The commentary you run beneath your awareness as you walk, work, wait, lie in bed at night. That is the true prayer. That is the decree. That is the story to which reality faithfully adds scenes. You may say to yourself, it doesn't work for me. I never get the break. People always overlook me. Nothing ever changes. And you think you are merely describing facts. But in truth, you are issuing commands. You are instructing creation how to treat you. And creation, having no will of its own, obeys. I tell you this not to frighten you, but to liberate you. For the moment you truly see that your inner speech is the pen that writes your outer life, you begin to choose your words with reverence. You become less careless with your sighs. You grow cautious with your complaints. You become tender with yourself in ways you were not before. You have been manifesting through expectation. You may not have noticed it, but you have lived with an inner sense of what usually happens, and that sense, vague but powerful, has been preparing tomorrow long before tomorrow arrived. If you expect rejection, you behave subtly in ways that invite it. If you expect delay, you hesitate just enough to create it. If you expect to be misunderstood, you speak just unclearly enough to confirm it. And then you say, "You see, I was right." You were right only because you were faithful to the assumption. I remember a woman who came to me many years ago. She said that nothing ever worked out for her. She spoke with the tired authority of someone who had collected many disappointments and arranged them into a creed. I asked her, not about her desires, but about her quiet expectations. Slowly, with tears, she admitted that she always waited for the other shoe to drop. She never allowed herself to relax into joy. She always anticipated the loss before the gain had even arrived. She had been manifesting perfectly the wrong thing. I told her, "You never stop manifesting. You only change what you manifest." For the first time, she wept, not from despair, but from release. For if she had created this by assumption, then she could uncreate it by a new assumption. And she did, not in a day, not through denial, but through the gentle re-education of her inner atmosphere, and the world followed. You manifest from your emotional home. Wherever you habitually return inwardly, that is the place from which your life grows. If your emotional home is anxiety, you can visit peace, but you will always return to anxiety, and life will keep furnishing that home. But if you move your emotional home to peace, anxiety may still visit for a while, yet it will no longer rule, and the furnishings of your world will change accordingly. Do you see now why technique alone cannot save you? You may visualize in the morning and then rehearse disaster all afternoon. You may affirm abundance and then inwardly argue for limitation every evening. And you will say, "Why does it not work?" It works unwaveringly. It works for whatever state you spend the most emotional time in. Your dominant state always wins. You manifest not what you sometimes feel, but what you most often return to. This is the hidden mercy of the law. It does not punish a passing doubt. It does not collapse at a moment of sadness. It listens patiently for your deepest consent. It follows the direction of your settled inner agreement. You have also manifested through memory. The past you return to is the future you rehearse. When you replay old humiliations, old betrayals, old losses, you are not remembering them. You are reseeding them. You give them new life as feeling, and the law, not recognizing time as you do, brings them forth again in fresh costumes. This is why some say, "I keep meeting the same type of person, or the same problems, follow me wherever I go." They are not followed by fate, they are accompanied by memory. Memory sustained with feeling is creation in disguise. To manifest from fear is to constantly seek safety from outside. To manifest from lack is to constantly seek supply from outside. To manifest from worthlessness is to constantly seek validation from outside. And the tragedy is not that you seek, it is that you forget that all three can only be permanently satisfied from within. The law has been operating in your life with relentless fairness. Every inner attitude has been expressed outwardly. Every persistent mood has been reflected. You were not abandoned by life, you were obeyed. And now you are beginning to see it. You may feel a quiet shock in this realization, a strange blend of relief and awe. Relief because no one else holds the reins, or because you do. You may feel a tremor of responsibility. Good, that is not fear, that is awakening. That is the moment when the dreamer begins to realize he has been dreaming. Let me tell you another story. A man once told me he was cursed with failure. Every venture collapsed. Every opportunity slipped away. Yet as I spoke with him, I saw that his inner speech was filled with quiet contempt for himself. He never spoke boldly inwardly. He never expected success. He attempted things apologetically. He acted as though he must justify his very existence. The world did nothing more than echo his hidden verdict. I asked him to do only one thing: change the way he spoke to himself in secret, not in public, not to impress anyone, only in the sanctuary of his own mind, to replace the verdict of "I am a failure" with "I am trusted by life." At first, it felt absurd to him, almost offensive, but he persisted. And gradually, in ways he could not predict, life began to treat him differently. Not because the world had changed its mind, but because he had. You see, you never stop manifesting. You only change what you manifest. Every time you silently accept an idea about yourself as true, you plant a seed. Every seed grows according to its kind. Fear grows fear. Confidence grows opportunity. Resentment grows resistance. Love grows harmony. The law is utterly faithful. Now, the beauty of this truth is that it does not require perfection. It requires only direction. You do not have to watch every thought like a jailer. You do not have to strain for flawless faith. You need only to choose, again and again, which state you will return to when you notice you have wandered. The responsibility I speak of is not heavy. It is gentle. It simply means that the power is in your hands now, not in the hands of chance. It means that no memory, no person, no condition can permanently dominate you unless you grant it inner consent. And inner consent can always be withdrawn. You are not asked to fight fear. You are asked to stop furnishing its room. You are not asked to destroy lack. You are asked to stop feeding it with imagination. You are not asked to heal the entire world. You are asked only to choose where you will dwell inwardly. And as you begin to choose deliberately, you will notice something miraculous in its simplicity. Your world will begin to adjust without effort on your part. You will not push. You will not force. The shadow never resists the light. It only moves when the light moves. So when I say to you now, you never stop manifesting, you only change what you manifest. I am placing a crown upon your head, not a burden upon your shoulders. For this means that at any moment, with no permission from circumstance, you can begin anew. You do not need to wait for the world to agree. The world never leads. It always follows. And now that you are beginning to feel the truth of this in your bones, the old excuse, "That's just the way life is," will no longer satisfy you. You will begin to sense that life is a mirror, not a master. And once you see the mirror as a mirror, you stop pleading with it and turn inward to change the face it reflects. Stay very still inside as you take this in. To not rush to conclusions. Simply let the idea settle. You have been manifesting your whole life, and now, at last, you are learning how you have been doing it. This understanding is the doorway. What comes next will show you how to walk through it. Very gently now, we move into the true engine of all manifestation. Up to this moment, we have spoken of consciousness, of states, of assumption. But now I take you to the living core of it all. Feeling is the secret. Not emotion as the world defines it, not the fleeting surface reactions of joy or irritation, but the deep inward sense of being that dominates your mind, even when you are silent. That is the creative force. That is the power that impresses the subconscious. That is the substance out of which your world is formed. The rational mind argues. It analyzes. It doubts. It demands proof. It measures. But it does not create. It edits after the fact. Feeling creates first. Feeling moves first. Feeling decides before thought has even finished its sentence. And the subconscious, which is the womb of all experience, listens only to feeling. It does not reason with you. It does not debate. It does not ask for explanations. It accepts the feeling you live in as truth, and it works day and night to objectify it. This is why I tell you that prayer is not asking. Prayer is not begging. Prayer is not repeating words. Prayer is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It is the inward knowing that something is already done. When a thing feels finished within you, it is finished in seed. And what is finished in seed must grow into form. You may remember a painful event from childhood. As you recall it now, notice what happens in your body. The heart tightens. The stomach stirs, the breath changes. The scene may be long past, but the feeling is present. The body does not know the difference between memory and reality. The subconscious does not distinguish between what you imagine and what you encounter through the senses. To it, feeling is fact. Now let me say something quietly powerful. Imagination is memory in advance. The same force that allows you to relive the past is the force that allows you to pre-live the future. The same mechanism that makes a remembered wound feel real can make a future victory feel real. The only difference is direction. You have used this faculty unconsciously your entire life. When you feared something before it happened, and then later said, "I knew this would happen," you were not prophesying. You were preparing. You were impressing the subconscious with an emotional expectation, and the world faithfully arranged itself to confirm it. When you anticipated rejection, you felt it before it arrived. When you anticipated failure, you felt it before the attempt. And the law, impartial and obedient, responded to the feeling. Now, for the first time, you are learning to deliberately generate feeling in the direction of fulfillment. The conscious mind may resist at first. It will say, "This is fantasy, this is pretending, this is foolish." Let it talk. The conscious mind is not the creator, it is the gatekeeper. Feeling walks past it without asking permission. I ask you now to notice something simple. Think of a lemon. See it in your mind. Bright, yellow, heavy, in your hand. Now imagine cutting it open. See the glistening flesh. Imagine bringing a slice to your mouth. Imagine the sharpness on your tongue. Already perhaps, your mouth has reacted. Saliva has stirred. The body answered a scene that never happened. No lemon entered the room. No knife touched your hand. And yet, the body believed. So you see, the nervous system obeys imagination. And what the nervous system obeys, the world must eventually echo. This is not poetry. This is mechanism. Now let us go deeper. You carry within you an emotional baseline, a default feeling tone. For some, it is calm. For some, it is urgency. For some, it is sadness disguised as strength. For some, it is hunger disguised as ambition. That baseline is the feeling state from which you habitually create. To change your life, you do not wrestle with every emotion. You change the baseline. And the baseline changes through repeated inner experience of a new feeling of being. Memory and imagination use the same inner organ. This is why the past seems so alive. This is also why the future can be made alive before it arrives. The same door opens both ways. The only question is which way you walk through it. Now I will guide you very gently toward your first small inner click. It will not be forced. It will not be dramatic. It will arrive quietly, like a shift in breathing. Do not try to make it happen. Allow it to happen. Let us suppose something simple. Do not choose the grandest desire for this first movement. Choose something gentle. Perhaps a feeling of relief. Not money yet. Not success yet. Just relief. The relief of knowing that something is handled. The relief of knowing that you do not have to struggle right now. Close your outer eyes if they are open. If they are already closed, let your inner eyes soften. Do not strain. Imagine that you are sitting in a familiar room. The lighting is calm. The air is still. Now imagine that someone you trust enters and says to you very casually, "It's taken care of. You don't have to worry about that anymore." Do not add details yet. Just receive the sentence, "It's taken care of." Now notice the feeling that follows, not the thought, the feeling. Perhaps the shoulders drop slightly. Perhaps the breath deepens. Perhaps the chest softens. That shift, that is the creative moment. That is the secret. You did not calculate your way into that feeling. You imagined a scene that implied safety, and the feeling followed. The subconscious accepted the implication and responded. This is how every desire is fulfilled. Not through chasing the thing itself, but through entering the feeling that would naturally be yours if the thing were already true. If you wanted to prove that you were wealthy, you would not argue with your bank. You would not affirm at your bills. You would move into the feeling of ease that wealth brings, the quiet confidence, the absence of urgency, the natural generosity of spirit. You would feel from that state, and the world would have no choice but to arrange the means. The reason most people cannot manifest deliberately is not because they lack imagination. It is because they do not permit themselves to feel what they desire without first seeing proof. They hold their feeling hostage to their senses, and yet the senses are meant to follow feeling, not lead it. Feeling is the magnet. Thought is the architect, but magnetism is what draws the substance. You may think that your feelings are caused by circumstances, but in truth, circumstances are caused by the feelings you consent to live in. The world does not make you feel. It offers you an object, and you choose the feeling by the meaning you give it. Over time, that meaning becomes automatic. That automatic meaning becomes your emotional home. To reprogram the mind, you do not attack thought with thought. You bathe thought in a new feeling. Feeling melts the old pattern without resistance. When you emotionally relive a painful memory, you are programming the present from the past. When you emotionally live a fulfilled imagination, you are programming the present from the future. One binds you, the other frees you. Both use the same faculty. I once said to an audience that the feeling of the wish fulfilled must dominate your consciousness. Not visit it, not pass through it occasionally. Dominate it, become its climate, become its atmosphere. And something in the room stilled, because they felt what that meant. It meant that you do not live as a person hoping for a change. You live as a person who has already changed inwardly. Now you may notice resistance rising. Perhaps a voice says, "But if I feel fulfilled now, won't I lose the desire?" No. You will lose the hunger that comes from emptiness, but you will gain the power that comes from possession in consciousness. And possession in consciousness is the only possession that can never be taken from you. The world can take a house. It can take money. It can take a body. It cannot take a state you have genuinely embodied. That state will simply express again in new form. Now let me show you how feeling works on a deeper level. Feeling is not only emotion. Feeling is conviction. It is inner tone. It is the way you silently lean toward or away from life. Two people can speak the same words and mean entirely different things, because the feeling beneath them is different. The law responds to the feeling, not the grammar. You may say, "I am calm," while inwardly bracing for impact. The law responds to the bracing, not the sentence. You may say, "I trust," while inwardly scanning for danger. The law responds to the scanning, not the declaration. This is why inner honesty is more powerful than outer performance. The subconscious knows exactly what you really feel. To reprogram, then you must begin to craft tiny sensory scenes that carry the feeling of fulfillment. Not lectures, not arguments, scenes. Soft, short, natural scenes. If you desire security, imagine the feeling of paying a bill with no tension in the body. If you desire love, imagine being casually held without needing reassurance. If you desire success, imagine the relaxed posture of someone who no longer proves anything. It is not the picture that does the work. It is the feeling the picture evokes. Now, as you listen to me, something subtle is happening. You are not merely learning an idea, you are beginning to experience the difference between thinking about change and feeling from change. And that difference is everything. The first inner click is not fireworks. It is a soft settling. It is the moment when you realize that you can feel differently without the world changing. First, that realization quietly unhooks you from the tyranny of appearances. From this moment on, you will begin to notice how often you wait for permission to feel. Permission from money, permission from people, permission from outcomes. And little by little, you will learn to give that permission to yourself first. That is reprogramming. You do not force feeling. You invite it through implication. You do not command the heart. You show it a scene that makes the feeling natural. Your subconscious was not meant to be bullied. It was meant to be persuaded through experience, inner experience. You are not trying to hypnotize yourself. You are teaching yourself who you are becoming. Now stay with me in this gentleness. Do not rush ahead to grand conclusions. Let this truth settle. Feeling is the secret. It always was. Every success you have ever known felt real before it became visible. Every failure you have ever known felt inevitable before it occurred. Not because fate decided, but because feeling prepared the way. And now, having touched this truth even slightly, you will never again be able to say, "My feelings have no power." You will know that your feelings are the very language to which life listens. We are only beginning to touch the depth of this. Much more is unfolding ahead. If you wish, I will continue with the next phase, where feeling is united with the state nearest sleep, the doorway where reprogramming becomes effortless. Now we come to the great engine itself. Everything you have felt stirring within you until now finds its order and its law here. This is the truth that governs all creation. You do not get what you ask for. You do not get what you hope for. You do not even get what you visualize from a distance. You get what you assume to be true. And what you assume, if persisted in, must harden into fact. This is not a possibility. This is inevitability. Most of the world lives in the posture of waiting. Waiting for permission. Waiting for proof. Waiting for conditions. Waiting for luck. Waiting for other people to change. Waiting for the past to loosen its grip. And in that waiting, they unknowingly assume something very specific. It is not mine yet. And the law hears that assumption with flawless clarity and replies, very well, it shall remain not yours. To assume is not to wait. To assume is to take possession in consciousness. It is to occupy a state inwardly before there is any visible justification to do so. To assume is to stand in the end as though it were already accomplished, and to let the world struggle to catch up with you. You must understand the difference between expectation and assumption. Expectation still places the thing in the future. It says, it is coming. Assumption places it in the present. It says, it is. Expectation still carries tension. Assumption carries quiet authority. Expectation still watches the clock. Assumption forgets time entirely. You have been taught to ask, to plead, to negotiate with life. You have been taught to pray as though you were speaking to a distant power that must decide whether you are worthy. But I tell you now, prayer is not a request. It is a recognition. It is the inward acceptance that what you desire is already true in a dimension deeper than the senses. When you assume a thing, you do not try to make it so. You recognize that it is so. And that recognition sets the law in motion. Why must the world obey your assumption? Because the world has no other choice. The world is not a power. It is a picture. It is not a cause. It is an effect. It is consciousness made visible, and no effect can disobey its cause. You may rebel against this truth. The mind often does. It wants exceptions. It wants loopholes. It wants to preserve the dignity of struggle. But the law does not bend for sentiment. It only reflects. If you assume you are rejected, the world will find ways to confirm it. If you assume you are chosen, the world will rearrange itself to prove it. If you assume you are unlucky, life will become a master of coincidence. If you assume you are favored, chance itself will begin to look like obedience. This is why two people can stand in the same city, on the same street, with the same opportunities before them, and live in entirely different worlds. They are not living in the same reality at all. They are living in the outpicturing of different assumptions. One looks at the door and assumes it is closed. The other looks at the same door and assumes it is opening. And life, obedient servant that it is, swings the door accordingly. Now let us turn to the ancient texts, not as history, not as religion, but as psychology veiled in story. When the scripture says, according to your faith, be it unto you, it is not speaking of belief in an external deity who arbitrarily rewards or withholds. It is stating the mechanism of creation itself. Faith is not hoping. Faith is assumed reality. It is the inner certainty that a thing already is. When the woman touched the garment and felt whole, she was not granted healing by permission. She took it by assumption. She accepted inwardly that the act was already done, and that acceptance reorganized her body. When the blind were told, according to your faith, it was not a moral test. It was a mechanical statement. The state you occupy determines the experience you receive. Even the words, I am, are not a name. They are a state of being. Whatever follows I am is the law in action. I am weak. I am forgotten. I am powerful. I am secure. These are not descriptions. These are commands to the creative power. You are not punished for your sins. You are not rewarded for your virtues. You are reflected by your assumptions. This is why I say to you now, with absolute certainty, the moment you stop asking and start assuming, something irreversible begins. You cross an inner threshold that cannot be uncrossed. You stop negotiating with shadows and begin commanding the light that casts them. To assume does not mean to boast. It does not mean to shout your certainty to the world. the deepest assumptions are silent. They are carried like a calm weight in the chest. They are spoken in the voice you use when no one is listening. If you truly assume you are secure, you do not need to defend yourself. If you truly assume you are loved, you do not need to demand reassurance. If you truly assume you are prosperous, you do not need to speak of money with anxiety. Your behavior will become natural evidence of the state you occupy. The law does not respond to what you try to convince yourself of. It responds to what you consent to be. Now listen very closely. You assume all the time already. When you walk into a room and feel invisible, you have assumed something. When you enter a situation and feel uneasy without knowing why, you have assumed something. When you check your purse or your pocket before spending, you have assumed something. When you brace for disappointment before good news, you have assumed something. You are not learning how to assume. You are learning how to choose what you assume. The world will never say, "Prove it to me first." It will always say, "Show me what you believe, and I will reflect it." The great mistake is to think that assumption is pretending. Pretending knows it is false. Assumption knows it is true. Long before the senses agree, pretending looks at the world and says, "One day." Assumption looks at the world and says, "Already." When you assume, you no longer seek signs. You become indifferent to timing. You stop bargaining with conditions, because inwardly, the matter is settled. Now you may ask, but how can I assume what I do not see? In the same way, you assume the sun will rise tomorrow, though you do not see it now. In the same way, you assume memory is real, though you cannot touch it. In the same way, you assume your heart will beat through the night while you sleep. You assume what you accept without argument. The law is simple, but it is mercilessly exact. If you assume something briefly and then return to the old state will continue to rule. If you assume something deeply and persistently, the old state must dissolve, not because you fight it, but because you starve it. A state lives on attention. Withdraw attention and it withers. I once told a man who feared poverty to do one thing only: never again mentally rehearse a future scene of lack. Not out loud, not in public, only in secret. The moment the mind drifted toward poverty, he was to gently return to the feeling of ease, not wealth yet, ease. The ease of knowing that this moment was safe. He did this without force, without violence to himself. And gradually, his entire relation to money changed, before a single condition did. Then, as law is faithful, the conditions followed. To assume is to live inverted relative to the world. The world says, "When I give you, you will feel." The law says, "Feel, and I will give." The world says, "Prove it, and I will believe." The law says, "Believe, and I will prove it." This inversion is the great stumbling block. The rational mind resists it with all its might, but the soul recognizes it instantly. The moment you accept that the inner state precedes the outer fact, you stop being hypnotized by appearances. You stop living as a reaction. You stop being whipped by circumstance. You quietly step behind the curtain where the levers are. From there, you do not chase the world, you direct it. To assume does not mean that doubt will never whisper. It means that doubt no longer votes. It may speak, but it no longer decides. You return again and again to the chosen state, not with tension, but with loyalty. Loyalty is the hidden power behind all manifestation. You do not need to assume violently. You assume as a king sits on a throne. He does not prove he is king. He rests in the seat that implies it. Now notice something subtle in yourself as you listen. The posture of your mind is shifting. You are no longer merely wishing. You are beginning to feel the quiet dignity of authorship. You are beginning to sense that asking is too small for what you actually are. And this is the true transition. The listener becomes the decider. The seeker becomes the source. The moment you stop asking life for permission to feel whole, life begins rearranging itself to match the wholeness you have claimed. To assume is to say inwardly, without force and without argument, "This is who I am now," and then to walk as though that were already established. At first, the world will not seem to notice. That is because the old shadow must finish playing out. But if you persist without returning to the old identity, the new shadow must appear. It has no choice. The law is not impressed by intensity. It is impressed by occupancy. It asks only one question. Where do you live inwardly? And now you are beginning to answer that question consciously. You are leaving the posture of the beggar. You are stepping into the posture of the one who assumes, and once that shift happens inwardly, the outer world must eventually bow, not as a favor, but as a reflection. If you wish, I will now continue with the next phase, where assumption is joined to the deepest creative doorway of all, the state nearest sleep, where reprogramming becomes effortless and permanent. Now we move into the chamber where the seal is pressed upon the subconscious itself, not by force, not by effort, but by stillness, by surrender, by the soft doorway that opens only when the outer senses begin to fall away. I speak now of that state which I have called the state akin to sleep, the interval where the mind is no longer held rigid by the world, yet not fully unconscious. It is the most fertile soil in all of creation. In all my years of teaching, I have found no doorway more immediate, more obedient, more precise than this borderland between waking and sleep. It is here that the conscious mind loosens its grip. It is here that the critical faculty grows quiet. It is here that the subconscious, so often guarded, so often resistant, opens without defense. When you lie upon your bed at night and the body grows heavy, when the breathing slows and the limbs lose their urgency, when you feel that soft drifting where thoughts arise without strain and vanish without effort, you are standing at the gate. This is not an accident. This is not simply rest. It is the doorway through which imagination passes into form. You do not need hours in this state. You do not need rituals that exhaust you. 3 minutes, truly felt, outweigh 3 hours of strained effort. 5 minutes in this borderland of consciousness equals days of outer struggle. For here, the subconscious does not argue. It accepts. And what it accepts, it must express. Many ask me, what must I do in this state? And I tell them always the same. Do not perform. Do not plead. Do not try to impress. Simply experience as though the thing were already done. The mistake is always the same. People enter this state and begin to ask. They speak inwardly as though speaking to a distant power. They explain, they justify, they beg, and by doing so, they affirm the state of not having. The subconscious hears not the words, but the posture. In the state akin to sleep, you do not request, you receive. You do not speak of becoming, you are. You do not rehearse effort, you rest in possession. If you desire health, you do not say, give me health. You feel the ease of the healed body. You sense the quiet comfort of normal breath. If you desire wealth, you do not ask to be made wealthy. You rest in the calm of abundance, already secured. If you desire love, you do not ask to be chosen. You feel the warmth of being cherished. You move inwardly into the end and dwell there without tension. This state is not entered by willpower. It is entered by surrender. You do not force the mind into stillness. You allow it to drift. You allow the body to grow heavy. You allow the mind to soften. And as it softens, the image you choose becomes the only remaining form. In that moment, imagination is no longer pretending. It is being. This is why this state is so powerful. It is the natural order reversed. The senses fall asleep. Imagination wakes up. And now hear this clearly. The subconscious never knows whether what you do in this state is outer fact or inner vision. It records both as equal. It stores both as real. And what it stores as real, it will express in time. This is not magic. This is law. When you enter this state, you must be gentle. Do not struggle. If doubt arises, do not fight it. Fighting gives it substance. Simply return to the feeling. The end is not maintained by force. It is maintained by preference. You choose to dwell in it because it feels better to do so. If fear appears, do not condemn yourself. Fear is only the echo of an old state that has not yet burned itself out. Thank it for what it once tried to protect, and return again to the new feeling. Again and again. Softly, quietly. You are not trying to overpower the subconscious. You are inviting it into a new home. The scene you choose in this state should be simple. One act, one implication, one quiet confirmation that the desire is fulfilled. A handshake, a word spoken to you, a letter opened, the feel of a ring on the finger, the sound of your own voice saying, It is done. Do not elaborate endlessly. Do not multiply scenes. One clear implication, repeated with ease, is enough. The subconscious does not require explanation. It requires only consistency of feeling. Now let me say something that many misunderstand. This state is not about falling asleep quickly. It is about what you feel as you fall asleep. You may drift in and out of awareness. You may lose the scene and find it again. That does not matter. What matters is the direction of the fall. You fall into the assumption, not away from it. If you fall asleep while feeling that you are already what you desire to be, the seed is planted in perfect soil. And if you awaken in the night, do not return to old anxieties. Return again to the state, not with effort, with familiarity. As one returns to a well-known room in the house, now there will be moments when the mind resists. It will say, "This is foolish." It will say, "This is imagination only." It will say, "Nothing is happening." These are not obstacles. These are signposts that the old state is losing its dominance. The old identity always protests when its reign is threatened. Do not argue with the surface mind. Simply bypass it. Go beneath it. Let it chatter itself into silence while you return to the feeling. The subconscious does not need persuasion. It needs direction. You are not here to convince yourself. You are here to consent to a new identity. And what you consent to while the senses sleep becomes the law of your waking life. Many ask, how often must I do this? And I tell them, not by count, but by naturalness. You do it until the new state begins to feel more real than the old one. You do it until the idea of returning to the old feels strange. You do it until you catch yourself during the day, thinking from the end without effort. When that happens, the work is already done. The outer world is only arranging its mirror. Now you must understand something of great importance. SATS does not create your assumption. It cements it. It seals it in the subconscious. You may assume during the day. You may revise during the day. You may imagine during the day. But it is the night that gives it roots. As the soil receives the seed without question, so the subconscious receives your last felt state without defense. This is why the ancients said, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." The heart is not emotion alone. It is the deep feeling toned acceptance that takes place beneath reason. You are not programming by repetition alone. You are programming by mood, by inner atmosphere, by emotional climate. If you fall asleep in hope, the seed is weak. If you fall asleep in struggle, the seed is confused. But if you fall asleep in possession, the seed is sovereign. You do not go into SATS to change the future. You go into it to establish the present. If you do this faithfully, not nervously, not desperately, but loyally, you will begin to notice changes that feel almost too natural to be supernatural. Conversations shift. Opportunities appear without strain. Ideas arrive unannounced. People respond differently. And the old you begins to feel distant, as though it belonged to another life. And you will not be astonished. You will simply recognize the shadow catching up to the form. The state akin to sleep is not a ceremony. It is a gateway. You pass through it every night, whether you use it or not. The only difference now is that you are no longer unconscious of it. Before, you allowed the day's worries to escort you through the door. Now you choose who walks with you into the depths. You no longer fall asleep as the old man. You fall asleep as the new. And this is how identities are replaced, without violence, without force, without struggle. This is how the velvet hand of imagination reshapes the iron world. You are not changing events. You are changing the one to whom the events occur. And the moment that inner figure is changed with conviction, the outer play must reorganize its cast and its script. If tonight you lie down, and you do nothing more than rest in the feeling that you are already what you desire to be, without bargaining, without questioning, without monitoring progress, you will have performed the creative act in its purest form, not as a technique, but as a state of being. And when a state is assumed nightly, it soon becomes the only room the mind knows. From there, the world has no choice but to move in harmony. If you wish, we will now move forward into the next great revelation, the strange, beautiful law that all men unknowingly live by, whether they accept it or not, that every person you meet is your own consciousness wearing another face. Now we pass into one of the most overlooked, yet most exact, operations of the law. A law so simple that the intellect dismisses it, and yet so precise that the body itself cannot escape it. I speak now of the law of reversibility. You have been taught that outer events produce inner emotions, that when the money comes, you will feel relieved, that when the problem ends, you will feel peace, that when the door opens, you will finally rest. This is how the world trains the mind to think. But the law operates in the reverse direction, always, without exception. It is not the event that creates the feeling. It is the feeling that creates the event. Relief is not the product of fulfillment. Relief is the cause of it. Fear is not the response to danger. Fear is the seed of danger. The body never waits for the world to decide how it should feel. The body obeys consciousness. It obeys the dominant emotional conclusion you accept as true. If a man suddenly believes with all his being that he is safe, his breathing changes, his muscles soften, his digestion alters, his entire chemistry reorganizes itself around that assumption. The body did not wait for evidence. It obeyed the mood, and the world outside is no different. It is only the larger body. If you feel relieved, now fully and truly relieved, the world must find a way to justify that relief. It has no other option. It must rearrange itself to match the emotional decree you have already issued. The mistake is always the same. Man waits to feel relieved until something outside changes, and so he lives locked in tension. Because tension assumes the problem is still active. Tension assumes the battle is still underway. Tension assumes the lack is still real. And the law says, so be it. But the moment you allow yourself to feel relieved before the change appears, you reverse the current of causation. You send the body a new command. You tell the nervous system it is over. And once the body accepts that command, the world must follow. You cannot feel relief and lack at the same time. They are mutually exclusive states. One cancels the other at the root. And the root, not the fruit, is where creation occurs. Now do not misunderstand me. Relief is not pretending everything is perfect. Relief is the acceptance that the desire is already fulfilled, where it truly counts. Relief is not excitement. It is not anticipation. It is the deep exhale that comes after the struggle has ended. It is the feeling you have when the bill is already paid. It is the feeling you have when the danger has already passed. It is the feeling you have when the verdict is already favorable. It is the emotional signature of completion. And because it is the signature of completion, it must call completion into being. Now I will guide you in this gently and precisely, because this is not an idea to be understood. This is an experience to be entered. Do not strain. Do not try to feel anything. Simply allow the body to respond to a suggestion as naturally as it responds to a memory. Recall a moment in your life when something that deeply worried you was suddenly resolved. Perhaps a letter arrived. Perhaps a word was spoken. Perhaps the danger dissolved. You remember the moment afterward, when your shoulders dropped without your permission, when your breath changed without effort, when your thoughts slowed. That is relief. Now do not stay with the memory. Let the feeling of it remain. Now gently withdraw the memory itself, but keep the bodily sensation, the softness in the chest, the unwinding in the stomach, the quiet in the mind, the sense that there is nothing left to fight. That sensation is not attached to any single event. It is a state, and that state can be entered at will. Now allow yourself to feel that same relief in relation to what you desire. Now, not by picturing the entire future, not by explaining how it came, simply by accepting the emotional conclusion that it has already been resolved. Let the body feel what the fulfilled state feels like after the miracle. Do you notice how the muscles soften when you do not need to defend? Do you notice how the breath changes when you do not need to prepare? Do you notice how the mind quiets when it does not need to chase? This is not imagination at work. This is assumption taking hold. Now, if doubt arises, do not resist it. Resistance feeds it. Instead, return again to the relief, not forcefully, gently, as one returns to a chair that supports their weight without question. You are not trying to make the world change. You are letting the world know that it already has. Here is the great secret that few understand. Fear and relief use the same mechanism. They both work through emotional acceptance. Fear assumes the worst is real. Relief assumes the best is complete. The law does not favor one over the other. It simply reflects. If fear can produce illness, why can relief not produce healing? If fear can produce loss, why can relief not produce provision? If fear can produce separation, why can relief not produce union? Both use the same channel, only the direction differs. Now you see why I say feeling is the secret, not feeling as emotion alone, but feeling as acceptance. Acceptance is the gate through which the subconscious admits reality. The subconscious never asks, is this true out there? It only asks, is this true in here? And when you answer that question with the feeling of relief, the world must echo that answer. Now remain with that relief for a few moments inwardly. Do not narrate it. Do not analyze it. Let it simply be the atmosphere of your being. This is not an exercise. This is an initiation. You are learning that you do not have to suffer forward into the future. You do not have to drag your body through worry to earn peace. Later, you can move emotionally into the end now, and let the end move physically toward you. You have reversed the sentence of causation. Now consider this carefully. If relief produces fulfillment, then waiting to feel relief until things change is backward. It guarantees delay. You would be asking the echo to speak before the voice. But when you speak relief first, the echo cannot remain silent. Now you understand why so many pray and see nothing. They pray in tension. They pray in fear. They pray as those who do not yet have. And their nervous systems agree. And the world agrees with the nervous system. A prayer answered in consciousness precedes a prayer answered in appearance. You do not pray to change the world. You pray from the world already changed. Now feel what happens in you when you accept that. Do you sense the burden lifting slightly? Do you feel the urgency loosening its grip? Do you notice the mental pressure easing? This is the signature of the fulfilled state. The world is not yet required to show it. The moment the body shows it, the world has already received the command. Now understand this. You will not be able to sustain relief all day at first, and that is not failure. You only need to return to it as often as you would a compass. The sailor does not stare at the star constantly. He checks it repeatedly and adjusts. So too, when you notice fear return, you do not condemn yourself. Fear is merely the old state requesting continuation. You answer not with argument, but with relief, again and again, not violently, not desperately, but faithfully. This is the quiet discipline of the awakened man. You are no longer wrestling with circumstances. You are training your body to respond to completion instead of waiting. And once the body learns this new language, it speaks it to the world without your conscious effort. The way you walk changes. The way you speak changes. The way you decide changes. Opportunities that once would not have registered suddenly appear obvious. Doors that once felt heavy begin to open without noise. And you will not connect these outer movements to the inner work directly at first. But later, you will see clearly, the relief came first. Now notice one more subtle truth. Relief does not demand proof. Relief exists because the matter is already closed in consciousness. If you require proof to feel relieved, you are still waiting. But if you feel relieved without proof, you have already crossed the bridge. Now I say to you, gently but with all authority, nothing that troubles you now can survive the sustained acceptance of relief. Not lack, not illness, not loneliness, not uncertainty. They exist only while they are emotionally sustained. Withdraw the emotional support and the structure collapses. This is not denial. This is relocation of cause. You are no longer allowing the world to dictate your inner climate. You are letting your inner climate dictate the world. Now take one slow inward breath and let it go. And as you release it, do not think of what you want to escape. Think only of what is already finished. Let the breath fall into that knowing. This is the moment where creation reverses direction. If you wish, I will now take you into the final and most confronting mystery of all. The discovery that every person you encounter, friend or foe, helper or obstacle, is your own inner state wearing another face. Now we come to the discipline that protects the seed after it has been planted. For many begin well, but few persist. Not because the law fails, but because the eyes return too quickly to the old evidence. This is why I say to you now, with great seriousness, you must learn to ignore appearances. The world you see today is not the world created today. It is the world created by yesterday's assumptions. What appears before your eyes is always delayed. It is the shadow of a former state, and yet man looks at the shadow and believes it to be the cause. He bows to it, he fears it, he worships it, and in doing so he unknowingly gives it the power to continue. You must reverse this relationship. You do not consult appearances to decide what is true. You consult consciousness. If you look to the world for confirmation of your assumption, you place the world back on the throne. And the moment you do that, you fall again into dependency. You become a reactor instead of a creator. This is the great error: to check, to measure, to inspect, to test, to demand signs. The man who truly assumes does not hunt for proof. He rests in conviction. He moves quietly through the world with an inner knowing that does not need arguments. You see, when you glance at the world to see if it has changed yet, you are silently confessing that it is the cause. And the law hears that confession. To look for signs is to say, it is not done yet. And what you declare as not done must remain so. This is why I warn you. Do not dig up the seed to see if it has sprouted. You will destroy its roots. There is a form of judgment spoken of in the scriptures that few understand. It is called righteous judgment. It does not mean moral judgment. It does not mean judging people. It means judging from the end instead of from the senses. The senses say, nothing has changed. Righteous judgment says, it is already done. The senses say, the account is still empty. Righteous judgment says, provision is secured. The senses say, the door is closed. Righteous judgment says, the way is prepared. This is not positive thinking. This is loyalty to cause over effect. You must learn to see through appearances, not by them. Now let me share with you a story that has lived within me for many years. There was a woman who came to me in great distress. Her husband had abandoned her and her children. The house was in danger of being taken. There was no income, no help from family. The outer world declared her defeated, and she believed it, until she learned otherwise. I told her not to fight the circumstance, not to pursue the man, not to plead with the world. I told her to assume only one thing, that she was already secure, not wealthy, not rich, simply secure. Every night she lay down and felt the relief of knowing the matter was settled, not as a hope, as a fact within. For weeks, nothing changed outwardly. Bills still arrived. The silence remained, and many times she wanted to call me and say, it is not working, but she did not. She held the end quietly. One morning, entirely unannounced, a distant relative she had not seen in years arrived at her door with a sum of money far beyond what was needed to save the house. He said he had suddenly felt her upon his mind and could not rest until he came. Now listen carefully. The money did not come because she fought. It did not come because she worried. It did not come because she checked. It came because she refused to let appearances define her reality, and that refusal altered the unseen structure beneath events. If she had allowed the world to be the judge, she would have confirmed her loss. Instead, she judged righteously from the end. Now understand this. Ignoring appearances does not mean becoming blind to facts. It means refusing to grant them creative authority. You may see the bill, but you do not bow to it. You may feel the ache, but you do not crown it. You may hear the refusal, but you do not enthrone it. You say inwardly, without force and without hostility, this is not final, and the law answers, so be it. Every time you react emotionally to the visible world, you renew its contract. Every time you return emotionally to the unseen end, you dissolve the old contract and sign a new one. Reaction is agreement. Return is sovereignty. Now I will speak plainly. Many fail not because they lack knowledge, but because they lack emotional independence from the world. They let the mood of the day dictate the mood of the soul. They let a single conversation overthrow weeks of inner work. They let a single delay convince them that the law has failed, but the law never fails. It is always the operator who changes commands midway. To ignore appearances is not to deny the senses violently. It is to see them and quietly assign them to the past. You say inwardly, this belongs to what I used to assume. You do not wrestle with it. You do not dramatize it. You simply outgrow it. This is maturity. maturity in consciousness. You must become someone who no longer asks, what is happening, but rather, what am I being? For what you are being determines what will be happening next. Now observe this in yourself. When something disturbs you, what is the first impulse? To check, to confirm, to ask others, to measure. This impulse arises from uncertainty, and uncertainty is the root of dependency. But the one who knows no longer checks. He expects. He does not seek signs. He recognizes patterns. Now you must cultivate this posture gently, not with strain, not with arrogance, with quiet fidelity to the end. When the mind tries to measure progress, you return to the state. When the world presents contradiction, you return to the state. When the old voice whispers doubt, you return to the state. Not to fight, to live. And this is how the new identity eclipses the old without conflict. There will be moments, perhaps many, where the outer world seems to mock your assumption. Do not be deceived. This is often the final echo of a state as it completes its exit. The world resists not because it is powerful, but because it was once fed. Do not interpret resistance as failure. Often it is the sign that the old structure is losing its support. You are not required to persuade the world. You are required only to persist in being what you have assumed yourself to be. Now notice something sacred. The more you ignore appearances, the more appearances begin to lose their emotional charge. They become information without authority. You see without trembling. You hear without collapsing. You observe without surrendering your throne. This is dominion. The outer world begins to feel like a stage set instead of a courtroom. And when this shift happens, manifestation accelerates without effort. Now I ask you inwardly, who judges your life right now? The senses or consciousness? If the senses are allowed to judge, you will always live in reaction. But if consciousness judges, the world must eventually submit. This is righteous judgment, not judging what is seen, judging what is true, and truth is always established in imagination first. Now I will leave you with one sentence that you must carry inwardly as a shield, not against the world, but against relapse. What I see does not determine what I am. What I see is what I was. Remain loyal to what you are becoming. And the moment you are tempted to seek confirmation outside, return inwardly to relief, to possession, to the end. Not because the world is hostile, but because the world is obedient. And an obedient servant must be commanded from above, not consulted from below. If you wish, we will now move into the final living mystery of all, the discovery that every person, every hand that helps you or resists you, every door that opens or closes, is your own state made visible and walking. Now we enter the mystery that, at first, unsettles the heart, and then, once understood, liberates it beyond measure. This is the truth that dissolves loneliness, blame, resentment, and even the illusion of opposition. The truth that reveals the living mechanism behind every encounter. Everyone is you pushed out. You do not meet strangers in this world. You meet reflections. You meet your own assumptions, wearing other faces. You meet your own inner conversations, walking as men and women. You meet your own self-concept, distributed across circumstance. This does not mean that others have no life of their own. It means that the version of them that you experience is filtered through the state you occupy. When you change state, the world does not argue. It rearranges its cast. If you assume people are unkind, life will obligingly send you faces that confirm it. If you assume people are generous, you will be introduced to hands that give without your request. If you assume authority is cruel, your superiors will seem harsh. If you assume authority is benevolent, leadership will soften before you without explanation. You do not fight personalities. You do not convert individuals, you shift states, and personalities follow. Now this truth wounds the pride at first. Because the mind wishes to blame. It wishes to locate the cause out there. It wishes to say, if only they would change. But the law says quietly, they already have, in accordance with what you believe. This is not meant to burden you. It is meant to free you. For the moment you realize that no one outside of you holds creative authority over your life, you stop begging others to be different. You stop fighting shadows. You go to the source. Let me speak plainly. Your employer does not control your prosperity, Your clients do not control your income. Your partner does not control your joy. Your family does not control your fate. They all play the roles assigned to them by your state. When the state changes, the script cannot remain. I have seen hardened men soften without being spoken to. I have watched doors open without being knocked upon. I have received letters of reconciliation from those who once swore they would never return. And in every case, the change occurred not out there, but in the one who learned to assume differently. You do not change people by words directed at them. You change people by words spoken about them within you. Your silent opinion of another is the command that shapes their behavior toward you. If you mentally rehearse someone as difficult, they will grow more difficult. If you inwardly revise them as kind, cooperative, generous, they will surprise you with that very nature. Often they will be unable to explain why they changed, but the law will know. The world is an echo chamber of your inner speech. Listen to how you speak of others when no one hears you. That speech is the architect of your relationships. Now this truth becomes most powerful when united with blessing. Blessing is not moral goodness. Blessing is mental assignment. To bless someone is to assume the best of them in consciousness and to feel it as natural. When you bless a man inwardly, you do not flatter him with words. You install a new role in the unseen, and the unseen always writes the next scene. Many long for harmony in relationships, yet they continue to rehearse grievances in secret. They repeat the old story nightly. They justify resentment, and the law, ever faithful, continues to mirror the same discord back to them. But the one who dares to revise, to bless, to assume peace internally, will watch in quiet astonishment as the outer world reorganizes without confrontation. I have told students for years, you never need to chase another person when you have mastered your state. If you want respect, dwell in the feeling of being respected. If you want love, dwell in the feeling of being cherished. If you want cooperation, dwell in the feeling of being supported. Then let the world discover how to give you its echo. Now you ask, but how can others change without their consent? Because you are not changing their will. You are changing the version of them that your world must display. There are countless possibilities of each person. You summon the one that matches your assumption. You are not manipulating minds. You are selecting realities. This is the great secret of influence that contains no effort. When you see the world as echo rather than enemy, your need to struggle with people dissolves. You stop preparing arguments. You stop sharpening words. You stop rehearsing debates. You rest in assumption, and the echo answers. You will notice drivers becoming courteous, clerks becoming helpful, letters becoming favorable, doors opening in unlikely quarters. Not because the world suddenly became kind, but because you changed the state that summoned its former aspects. Now let us speak of attraction in its purest form, not the shallow attraction of appearance, but the deep magnetic harmony of state. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are being. If you are being anxious, you will attract uncertainty. If you are being trusting, you will attract support. If you are being resentful, you will attract resistance. If you are being gracious, you will attract grace. The chant of the state calls forth its mirror. Now understand how relationships transform without a single conversation. You withdraw inner resistance. You revise your silent verdict. You bless rather than curse. And the other person begins to move differently, because the echo chamber has been altered. What once sounded like hostility now sounds like neutrality. What once sounded like indifference now sounds like interest. What once sounded like conflict now sounds like cooperation. Not always instantly to the eye, but irresistibly in the unseen. This is why I say forgiveness is not a moral duty. It is a practical act of self-liberation. To forgive is to release a state, and the release of a state alters the entire line of events that followed from it. You are not forgiving someone out there. You are forgiving the version of yourself that consented to that story. And when you forgive, you close the chapter. Now something very beautiful begins to happen as this truth takes root. The world no longer feels chaotic. It begins to feel ordered, not rigid, but coherent, not predictable, but intelligent. You begin to sense that life is not opposing you. It is listening to you. And when this realization becomes natural, the The tension you once carried in relationships falls away. You no longer walk into rooms armored. You no longer brace for hostility. You expect harmony, and harmony appears. You bless without flattery. You assume without demand. You receive without shock. And you feel for the first time that the universe is not random, but responsive. This is why I have always said, change your conception of yourself, and you automatically change your world. For the world is nothing but your self-concept set into motion. There is only one to change, you. And that one change ripples outward through every face you meet. Now listen carefully. This truth also ends the need for control. You are no longer tempted to manage others, fix them, coerce them, or plead with them. You become sovereign in your own state, and sovereignty is always mirrored as authority in the world. People will begin to treat you according to how you treat yourself in imagination. They will not know why. You will not need to explain how. The law will do the work. This is alignment. Life begins to feel as though it is cooperating with you rather than resisting you. And this sensation is not illusion, it is accuracy. You are finally in agreement with the mechanism of your own experience. Now take this inwardly. Do not ask, how can I make them change? Ask only, who am I being that they reflect thus? And in that question, you reclaim the throne. You no longer feel small in the presence of others. You no longer surrender your mood to their tone. You no longer wait for their permission to feel free. You bless and you move on. And the world rearranges itself behind your back. This is why so many transformations look like coincidence to observers. They see only the shadow. You know the form. Now the listener begins to feel something very subtle. The sense that everything is aligning without force, without loud declarations, without struggle. It is alignment, not conquest. This is the peace of the awakened. If you wish, I will now guide you into the sacred art that dissolves the last chains of the past, the technique through which memory itself is rewritten, and where yesterday loses its power to command tomorrow. Now we step into the final chamber of freedom, the place where the chains that seem oldest and heaviest are revealed to be nothing more than memory held in place by feeling. I speak now of revision, the art of reprogramming the past so completely that its power over the present dissolves. Most people believe the past is fixed. They say, it happened, therefore it must always affect me. But this is an illusion born of misunderstanding. The past has no power of its own. It lives only as memory, and memory lives only as feeling now. Therefore, the past is not behind you. It is within you. And what is within you can be changed. You do not suffer because something once happened. You suffer because you are still feeling it as true. The moment you change the feeling tone of a memory, you change the past that is active in your present. This is not denial. This is not fantasy. This is the law of consciousness applied backward through time. You see, the subconscious does not know the difference between what you remember and what you imagine. It accepts both as equally real. It only asks one question: what am I feeling now? And whatever you feel now, it takes as the truth of your life. If you remember an old failure and feel shame, the subconscious says, this is who you are. If you revise that memory and feel dignity, the subconscious says, this is who you are. And then the world conforms accordingly. This is why men repeat the same patterns, decade after decade. They are not repeating events. They are repeating states anchored in unrevised memory. Now I will guide you through this sacred act gently, because this is not about violence to the past. It is about redemption of it. First, understand this. You do not revise to change facts. You revise to change identity. When identity changes, the facts that proceed from it must change as well. Now bring to mind, softly and without tension, a moment of your life that still carries emotional weight. Not the worst thing you have ever known. Choose something manageable. A moment of failure, a rejection, a humiliation, a loss, a conversation that still echoes with bitterness. Do not analyze it. Do not justify it. Simply observe that it is a scene that still makes you feel something now. Now here is the key. The feeling you experience when you recall, it is not the past, it is the present. And therefore, it can be changed now. Now close your eyes inwardly and let the scene appear as it originally did. Do not fight it. Let it play as a faint echo. Now freeze it at the emotional peak. The moment just before the pain. And now I ask you, if that moment had ended differently, how would you feel now? Do not change the entire event. Change only the conclusion. Let the words that were not spoken be spoken now. Let the gesture that was withheld be given now. Let the door that was closed be opened now. Watch the scene complete itself in your favor. Do not rush. Allow the new ending to unfold with simplicity. And now, most importantly, feel what follows the new ending. Is there relief? Is there dignity? Is there peace? Is there release? Do not describe it. Allow it to be. Now remain with that feeling. Let it sink into the body. Let the nervous system accept the new conclusion as the truth. Here is the miracle. When the feeling changes, the memory changes with it. And when the memory changes, the past that was shaping your present is dissolved. The subconscious does not say, but the old version really happened. It says only, this is how it ended. And from that new ending, a new future must grow. This is why I have said many times, revise the day before you sleep. Do not carry the emotional debris of the old state into the workshop of creation. Clean it, purify it, redeem it. If a conversation went poorly, revise it. If you were ignored, revise it. If you felt small, revise it. If you failed, revise it. Not to deceive yourself, but to free yourself. Now understand this deeply. You are not rewriting history. You are rewriting the only history that matters, the one stored in consciousness. And the world does not respond to records. It responds to states. A man once came to me from a history of financial ruin. Every venture he had touched seemed to collapse. He had formed an identity of failure without knowing it. Each memory confirmed it. Each attempt reinforced it. I asked him to revise not his bank account, but his story. Each night, he took one memory of loss and rewrote it as confidence, not wealth, confidence. He imagined himself walking away from those old scenes with calm dignity instead of defeat. He did this nightly without strain. Within months, opportunities began to find him that required no selling, no pleading, no desperation. They aligned with the man he had become in revision, not with the man he had been in memory. He did not heal his past. He replaced it, and when the past changed, the future had no anchor to keep repeating itself. Now you begin to feel something loosening in you, not because of belief, but because of recognition. You realize that the story you have been telling yourself may not be true at all. You realize that the version of you that failed may not be the only version that exists. And this realization is liberty. You are not bound to what happened. You are bound only to what you consent to remember as true now. Revision is not denial of pain. It is transmutation of it. You do not erase the experience. You erase the authority it once held over you. Now listen very carefully. Every block you believe you have in love, in money, in confidence, in health, has a memory behind it that has never been revised. A moment where something proved to you who you thought you were, and you accepted it. And that acceptance became law. Revision is the act of withdrawing that consent. You are saying inwardly, that conclusion is no longer valid. And when the inner verdict changes, the outer courtroom must adjourn. Now feel once more what it is like to exist without the emotional weight of that old scene, even slightly, even faintly. Do you feel the lightness, the quiet freedom, the sense that the future is no longer obligated to resemble the past? This is not hope. This is release. You are not trying to get somewhere. You are laying something down. And what you lay down inwardly, life can no longer require you to carry. You are now discovering that memory is not a prison, it is clay, and clay reshapes easily in the hands of imagination. Now one final truth about revision, you cannot do it wrongly. If you feel even the smallest shift toward peace, the seed has taken root. You do not need vivid pictures. You do not need dramatic scenes. You need only the change of feeling. Feeling is the signature of acceptance, and acceptance is the law. Now the listener begins to feel something profound, the sense that the past no longer defines the edges of the future, that the future is not merely an extension of yesterday, that identity is becoming fluid. And with this realization comes a gentle shock of freedom. You are no longer repairing a broken life. You are selecting a new one, and selection is effortless when the old consent is withdrawn. Now we have reached the final threshold, the last movement where everything you have learned, condenses into a single living posture of being. If you wish, I will now carry you into the final state, the wealthy, healed, sovereign identity itself, where assumption is no longer an exercise, but your natural resting place. Now we arrive at the quiet center of everything you have been learning, without realizing it. This is the place where effort dissolves, where technique fades into being, where the one who was once trying to become now simply is. For all along, the law was not asking you to chase manifestations. It was asking you to change your self-concept. Do you see it now? You were never meant to be a seeker. You were meant to be a state. The world does not respond to what you wish for. It responds to what you consent to be. And now, after all this inner work, after the quiet dissolving of old memories, after the soft replacement of fear with knowing, something within you has shifted. You may not be able to point to the exact moment, but you feel it. A subtle firmness, a still authority, a calm that does not come from circumstances. This is the birth of the new self-concept. The old self used to ask, will it work? The new self simply assumes. The old self used to wait. The new self expects. The old self watched the world for permission. The new self moves first, and the world follows. You no longer wonder if you are chosen. You move as one who knows. Your thoughts begin to sound different, not because you force them, but because the state has changed. You notice that your inner speech is quieter, slower, more certain. You no longer argue with yourself. You no longer rehearse defeat. You no longer prepare for disappointment as a habit. Now you prepare for alignment. You speak inwardly as one who is already supported. You decide as one who already trusts life. You walk as one who is no longer seeking approval. And this is how you know the self-concept has changed. You stop trying to prove anything. When a state is unstable, it seeks validation. When a state is natural, it rests. You will notice that you no longer over-explain your dreams. You no longer beg for reassurance. You no longer scan the horizon anxiously for signs. There is a settled feeling in the chest, a quiet assurance that whatever is required will appear without struggle. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. You are no longer a person who is trying to manifest. That word itself begins to fall away. You now live from assumption, and assumption does not strain. The farmer does not strain once the seed is in the ground. He knows what will grow, not because he hopes, but because he understands the law. So now you too know your identity has changed from one who wants to one who expects, from one who tries to one who allows, from one who struggles to one who assumes. And as this identity settles, you will notice changes that feel almost ordinary, and yet they are the truest evidence of transformation. You react more slowly. You speak with more economy. You choose with less hesitation. You walk with less urgency. You no longer chase outcomes with your nerves. You feel no need to force doors. You simply take the next natural step, not as a gamble, but as an expression of who you already are. This is the mark of the new self-concept. Your actions change without inner conflict. You do not have to convince yourself to be confident. You do not have to talk yourself into courage. The state is doing the work now. The identity is leading, and the world, obedient as ever, will follow. People will begin to treat you differently, but not in dramatic ways at first. It will be subtle. Their tone will soften. Their attention will sharpen. Their respect will come without demand. Opportunities will meet you without chasing. Answers will arrive without strain. And what will astonish you most is this: it will all feel normal. That is how you know it is real. If it felt shocking, it would still be a visitor. If it feels natural, it has become your home. Now you understand why I have said all my life that the secret is not in effort. It is in identity. You cannot outperform your self-concept. You will always return to it until it changes. And now it has changed. You are no longer the one looking through the glass at a distant life. You are the one inside the scene. You are no longer rehearsing success. You are moving as though success is already familiar. Your decisions come from fullness, not from fear. Your choices are informed by sufficiency, not by lack. Your movements are guided by expectancy, not by struggle. And the outer world cannot resist this rearrangement, because it is not being asked, it is being shown. Shown who you are now. Shown what you now accept as normal. shown what you now assume as inevitable. The law never asks if you are ready. It only asks what you are being. And now you are being the one who knows. This is why, even when challenges appear, and they no longer shake you, they feel like passing weather, not like verdicts. You respond instead of react. You adjust instead of collapse. You revise instead of regret. The new self-concept does not panic. It operates. You no longer feel that life is happening to you. You sense, gently but unmistakably, that it is happening through you. That you are no longer a passenger inside events, but the quiet selector of them. And this is not something you affirm. It is something you recognize. Recognition is deeper than belief. Belief can still tremble. Recognition is still. Now you understand what it means to be the operant power, not as a slogan, not as a boast, but as a lived reality. You choose states the way you once chose reactions. You select inner posture the way you once selected excuses. And life mirrors your choice. The listener now feels something profound. The end of hunger. Not the end of desire, but the end of desperation. Desire no longer feels like a wound. It feels like a direction. You want because you are, not because you lack. And this is the final alchemy. You do not manifest to complete yourself. You manifest because you already feel complete. Now you are no longer asking the law to give you something. You are allowing the law to show you who you have become. And from this state, the question is no longer, can I create this? The question quietly disappears. Only one remains. What shall I assume next? And whatever you choose, gently, calmly, silently, must follow. If you wish, I will now carry you into the final benediction, the closing recognition where the law gives way to the promise, and the imaginer remembers who he truly is, beyond all states. Now we come to the final movement, not the end, but the ceiling. This is where what you have received is no longer something you think about, but something that settles into you as a living pattern. Tonight the mind is sealed, not by force, not by effort, but by quiet consent. What you agree to be as you fall asleep tonight will become the law of your tomorrows. So now I speak to you as I would to those who sat before me in the stillness of an evening lecture, when the outside world had softened and the senses were already beginning to loosen their grip. Tonight, when you prepare for sleep, do not rush it. Let it be a gentle crossing, not an escape. Dim the outer world, not only the lights, but the inner noise as well. Lay the body down as one lays down a burden. You are not going to sleep to rest from life. You are going to sleep to shape it. As your breathing slows and the body begins to feel heavy, do not try to control the mind with strain. Simply let attention drift from the outer room to the inner chamber, that quiet place behind the eyes where images rise without effort. This is the doorway. This is the altar. Now do not imagine many things. Choose one simple scene, not a spectacle, not a dramatic event, but a short, natural moment that would only be possible if your desire were already fulfilled. It might be a handshake, a voice congratulating you, a letter already opened, a familiar room that now feels different because you feel different inside it. Do not watch yourself in the scene as though you were a stranger. Be inside the body that is already living it. Feel the floor beneath your feet. Feel the weight of your arms. Feel the ease in your chest. Let it be ordinary. Let it be real. And now comes the most important part. Do not ask if it will happen. Let the question dissolve. Instead, allow a single feeling to rise, the feeling that naturally follows fulfillment. Not excitement, not shock, but quiet relief. The deep, calm knowing that says, it is done. Relief is the signature of completion. Now from within that feeling, allow a single phrase to form, not shouted, not strained, but whispered inwardly as one states a fact. Let it be something simple, something final. Not I will be, but I am. Not I will have, but it is mine. Let the words fall into the feeling as gently as a stone sinks into water. Do not repeat the phrase mechanically. Let it rise and fall with the breath. Each time it returns, let it carry the same quiet certainty. If the mind wanders, bring it back kindly, not with force. You are not disciplining a soldier. You are guiding a child. And when the body becomes so heavy that the scene begins to blur, do not fight to hold it. Let it fade as you drift into sleep. The work is already done. The impression has been made. You do not need to guard it. The subconscious has accepted it. Sleep now as the one who has, not the one who hopes. You are not falling asleep as the person you were this morning. You are falling asleep as the state you have chosen. This is the ceiling. Now I tell you something sacred and true. What you feel as you enter sleep tonight will become the climate of your future. Not the event, not the object, the climate. And the climate determines all growth. If you sleep in knowing, knowing will grow. If you sleep in peace, peace will expand. If you sleep in certainty, certainty will harden into fact. Do not ask how it will come. The seed does not plan the harvest. Do not check tomorrow for signs. The womb does not announce conception. Simply live. Live lightly. Now the outer ritual is almost finished, but something deeper must be spoken, something that rises above the law itself. For the law is the way things move, but the promise is why they move. The law gives you bread. The promise reveals who you truly are. You have learned tonight how to move mountains by assumption. You have learned how to reshape memory, alter identity, and summon experience. But there is something beyond the shaping of worlds, the recognition of the one who shapes. And I tell you now, with the same reverence with which I have told it all my life, the power you have been using is not something outside of you. It is not a force you borrow. It is not an energy you channel. It is your very being. When scripture says, I am, it is not naming a distant deity. It is naming the core of your awareness. Before you were rich or poor, loved or lonely, successful or struggling, you were aware. And that awareness has never changed. States rise and fall. Circumstances appear and vanish. But the sense of I am remains. You have been shaping yourself like a potter shapes clay. But the potter itself was never the clay. The potter is the witness, the imaginer, the awareness. And now, perhaps for the first time, you feel it, not as an idea, but as a presence. The still, quiet sense that you exist behind all roles. The silent watcher who wears every mask, but is bound by none. This is the promise. The promise is not that you will get everything you desire. The promise is that you will awaken to the one who desires. When this recognition dawns, desire no longer feels desperate. It feels playful, creative, free. You shape because you enjoy shaping. You imagine because imagining is your nature. You do not create to prove your worth. You create because creation is your signature. And now life itself begins to feel less like a trial and more like a scripture that you are both reading and writing at the same time. Every event becomes symbolic. Every meeting becomes meaningful. Every delay becomes instruction. Every fulfillment becomes confirmation. You no longer feel lost in the world. You feel as though the world is unfolding within you. And so, as we approach the final silence, I speak one last thing to your heart, not as a teacher, not as a guide, but as one awareness to another. You were never broken. You were never missing anything. You were only sleeping inside a story you forgot you were telling. Tonight you remember. Tonight you return. And because you return, nothing can ever truly bind you again. Not the past, not fear, not circumstance. From this night forward, you do not live waiting for destiny. You live as its source. Now let the words fall away. Let even the thoughts grow quiet. Let the feeling remain. The feeling that it is done. The feeling that you are home. The feeling that something ancient has been gently reawakened within you. And now, rest. Rest as the imaginer. Rest as the chosen. Rest as the one who knows. May this night be counted unto you for righteousness. May your sleep be deep and untroubled. May your awakening be gentle and sure. And may you walk from this moment forward with the quiet authority of one who has seen the inner truth. It is done.